user perspective of the CLI and the features that technical features that we currently have and are going to be the next steps to improve the CLI and the APK as a whole.
Cool. Sounds good. Sounds good. I don't think that we have anyone from Aragon Black on the call. The team, the Aragon Black team, I think is still working on.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Hey, Louis.
Yo. There's no not many people on the call. Maybe we'll wait one more minute, see if anyone from A1 and Aragon Black joins. Um, Yalda and Daniel, do you mind taking notes today?
I can take notes if that's what you mean by Daniel.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. Let me know if you have the link to the notes. I want to link it again here. Yeah. So let's one until 07 and start. I'm curious, who is RKZell exactly?
That's Radek. He's with Otter.
Okay, okay, cool. Thanks.
Not just a lurker.
Yeah, thank you. Hi.
No worries. Yeah. I was just wondering, like, I have seen the pseudonym a few times, but wasn't sure. Okay, so let's start. As we don't have anyone from Aragon 1, let's see if they join later on, but in order to um, not to be delayed too much, maybe we can start with Otark updating us today.
Yeah, totally. So as mentioned in the previous call, this last cycle was focused a lot on like support and maintenance for the feature ads that we didn't get into the mainnet release for different applications. So that involved specifically, we started to integrate the deep linking into open enterprise applications. We basically wrapped up the work on an alternative template using two tokens and the experimental token manager. That's just in review cycles right now. We are moving forward with allowing work to be submitted to bounties without requiring an application, which allows for a few use cases we've heard requests for within the project's application. For allocations, we're working on the ability to edit budgets, and then there's been lots of just general polish. We made some serious projects with end-to-end testing. Um, we don't have the full test flow we want, but at least the framework so we can move forward with bounties for end-to-end testing and things along those lines. And then we've made some adjustments to our release management process that should help us in the future and allow us to get out fairly frequent, at least front end updates to all of the applications that we have. There was also a small gas price API fix for the template, but that was not too much of a lift. Going forward, we're going to be working more on the onboarding user experience, which again sort of ties into the gas price API, just so that there's more feedback to the user when they're creating the organizations. And hopefully we don't see as many failures there going forward with those changes. The audit was completed for the token manager and it's been re-reviewed. That should be published shortly. So you can look forward to that. And then once that's in place, we should be publishing the token manager to Hatch in the short term, and then looking to have these token manager changes brought into the main token manager application in at the same time as the other contract changes for the apps in Q1 2020. The home app is, we're going to continue working on the home app over the next cycle, just so that we have like at least an experimental release for that people can see, and organizations can start using those features even if they're not in the client. And then we're going to start exploring organization insights, which also sort of ties into voting insights. That's something that we'd like to cover on this call potentially, but there's relatively low turnout, so we might push that to the next all devs, depending on whether more people show up or not. We are going to be working more on the token API, rad spec helpers, and then some initiatives on expanding projects. So those are the main things that we're going to be working on the next cycle. Again, the last cycle was more support and maintenance for the things that we mentioned. And is John on here? Yeah, I'll pass it off to John for Owl.
Yeah, not too much else. Oh, sorry.
No, just so Arthur, I just have I'm just curious about
Yeah.
So like you talked about the two token template. Is it what is it exactly?
It's just an alternative template that uses all of the open enterprise apps. It's fairly in line with what OneHive was looking at for a template, but it allows you to have a reputation token, a semi-transferable, in addition to like a base token. So your organization can have a truly transferable or mintable token in addition to a quasi-transferable.
Cool. Okay.
There's
Yeah. So this is it's going to be more flexible than that too. Basically, you can either have one token or two tokens, and you can yeah, I think we have to talk about it more. But the one thing that's been coming up in user research is people have asked for the agent app, and our template doesn't have that yet. So before we re-release a template, we need to just kind of circle back more on what the template strategy is, because we're starting to push the limits of templates and how it works for conditional add-ons, since this is different than adding an agent app. So Brett's not in this call. I wanted to, this was like a discussion topic I was thinking of that just came up today, but yeah, it's something I hope to try to like circle back on, because I think it'd be good to just understand the long-term strategy for how we're approaching templates in the UI, so we can like get this feature out the door. But yeah, we'd finished the contract, but based on user research, we probably have to re-look at it and add the agent at the very least. So so that's something that we're figuring out.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks a lot. Sorry. So yeah, perfect. John.
Yeah. Not too much to update. With basically what's the latest that we're working on is kind of just creating a version of Open Enterprise that includes all of the features that we're working on, some that are not merged into the sort of main Aragon repositories yet. That's like basically releasing a version of Open Enterprise with contextual discussions in dot voting, 3-box identity resolution throughout the Aragon and Aragon UI components, Aragon profiles, and then merging all of this with smart contract-based pinning that we've been working on for organization settings, and also the projects app, which requires some custom Aragon JS stuff to make it work right. So yeah, hopefully in the beginning of 2020 or like the very end of this year, we'll have that released on Rinkeby, and people can play with those features and tell us what they like and what we should continue investing time in and prioritize before others potentially. So yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Anyone has a question on what has been said? We have mostly like 90% autark people here, so maybe Matthew or Daniel, but otherwise we'll move on and have Matthew or Daniel update us about Aragon Mesh.
Hello.
Hey.
So we created an AGP for Aragon Mesh last week, continue funding people that are part of the SDK working group but are not part of a Flock team. That includes currently me, Matthew, and Daplion. And yeah, please check the AGP and, and vote. And on the product side, we've been adding. I'm not sure what was the last update, but we've been kind of dividing features and commands to each person and doing like a big refactor with unit tests and integration tests and all that. We are kind of looking to release a new version, I think, in a week or two, with like the first phase of the refactor, which hopefully will be much more stable and reliable. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Do you want to add anything, Matthew?
No, that's pretty much it. Basically, we are extracting all the logic from the CLI into an SDK, and we're aiming to test coverage of close to 100%. So hopefully, we'll have a little bit more stable CLI for the version 7.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. As we have no one from Aragon Black, this is pretty tiny all devs today. I'll go on with the Aragon Association update. I haven't had time to really prepare for this, but the main things I can think of, and also that are dev related, is about the security process first. Where so over time, like as we go and discover new information, we rethink how things work. So a few months ago, we had an ANSP 43, which said that the association was in charge of like contracting with security auditors on behalf of our Aragon teams. We're thinking that it for different reasons, both like operational and legal. So first, like operationally, we want teams to be more independent in contracting security audits as the network scales. And legally, there are some reasons that push us to to conclude that it's not ideal that the AA is the main contractor and pays for these audits. So basically, what we're thinking about is moving in another like if like the community sees value into this in a system where the AA is in charge of like compiling a list of preferred security partners and negotiating deals with them, and then Aragon teams can and on the other hand a list of Aragon teams who have been funded through the Aragon Treasury, which is the precise requirements are not like fully defined yet, but like and letting like teams reach out to auditors under like the preferred security preferred terms that we have negotiated. So that's something that we are thinking about and moving forward. So one thing that is tricky and we have to deal with is that most teams haven't who have been funded in the past haven't really planned for security audit costs themselves. So that's something that we have to an operational detail that we have to manage. But let's be in touch on these things, obviously, and we'll make it work. So that's for security. Otherwise, like the AA is in a pretty much like a transition. So Joe joined us a few weeks ago. Now Burada, dear community member at first, joined us still under his pseudonymous name, which is quite exciting. And so we are currently like cleaning a backlog of operational things that we need to get in order before we can fully implement new stuff and new operations and new strategy. Um, and yeah, and otherwise we're experimenting. I think, but that's for the whole Nest DAO. We have been voting on our first investment, so we're still like experimenting with working groups, and I think it's interesting because might be valuable for other how the way we structure the Nest DAO might be used for other working groups, perhaps even like development related or product related and all that. So yeah, there are probably other things, but that's what I can think of for now. Um, so if do you guys have any question related to this? Overall, if you have any question about the AA and what we do and stuff, something that will work very soon on making like the most transparent possible. If we are to decentralize, we need everyone to be aware of like all the things that are done and stuff, so we can decentralize properly. But if you have any question, don't hesitate to reach out to us or me. Um, so yeah, we're done. Maybe we can jump to discussions. I don't know if any of you guys wanted to add something. I had one discussion element. Um, yeah, do you want to add anything to the agenda? All right, then hopefully like um, we can. So I had one topic which has already been proposed in the past. I want to discuss it under like yeah again and maybe with a bit more in-depth discussion. Hopefully, like the fact that people are away will not be a problem. But it's like so the discussion is like turning all devs into a working group. That's not really like the point that I'm not trying to make all devs turn into a working group arbitrarily, but I'd like to have the discussion to understand basically. There's a link in the agenda to a HackMD document where I've compiled a few questions. Um, and so I started with going to the wiki to check out what was the original purpose of all devs. And it was said the All Aragon Devs meeting is a public meeting of Aragon developers. All developers working on all layers of the Aragon stack are welcome to join if they have an agenda item they'd like to discuss. So very generic, but mostly like um, all devs is there to sync among developers and probably to coordinate and to spread the knowledge around development activities, and also as a way to be a point of contact and basically like let people engage. If they were curious about development in Aragon, they could jump in all devs, but reaching out either to me or Brett as per the wiki, and ask to join. So I think that it was the original purpose of all devs. Um, yeah, and so today, like I think it's mostly that basically like status updates, so to coordinate and kind of sync on different things and discuss like hot topics development wise. And so based on that, you'll let me know if you agree that that's currently what we're doing in all devs. But I wanted to ask if we wanted to do a bit more or have a bit different like functions in the all devs. So for example, like going towards a development working group or something like that. And And so in order also to provide a bit of background, to kind of remind us what all devs has been in the past, I've gathered a list of topics that we've discussed like during past all devs. I will go quickly through it to refresh your memory, and so we can have the conversation. Um, um, and to understand like if we're happy on what we've done with these different topics and stuff. So for example, like we've been talking about storage and IPFS, Aragon JS review process. We've also been talking about should all devs be turned into working group, which is funny. We've been talking about Aragon client product development pipeline. This was a way to coordinate among teams to make changes to coordinate development. I don't know if this was really implemented. We've been talking to Flock Common, Aragon PM registry, token whitelisting release, discussion on teams owning GitHub repositories, Aragon PM instances, Aragon PM.eth, Aragon PM.eth, etc. Developer and user documentation in Aragon, token manager strategy for quasi-transferable tokens, Solidity 0.5 upgrade path, PR review process for Aragon repos, Aragon on XDAI, IPFS spinning with Pinata, potential caching solutions, IPFS follow-up, accessing IndexedDB through Aragon apps, forwarding API, Markdown editor in Aragon UI, security records process, and the list goes on. So yeah, I just wanted to, and so going through this, I was wondering like if all these different topics were actioned after the call and stuff, and if it made sense to give more like volume and authority to all devs or more power to do stuff with perhaps like the people compensated there to make sure that that like these items were followed on. So yeah, I will open it to you. Yeah, do you guys have thoughts on that?
I like the idea of potentially merging with the Aragon SDK working group. Maybe some of the topics would be more appropriate for the Aragon product working group, but I feel like we probably don't need all three.
To me, the biggest one that I think would have a lot of value is the getting more action items at the end of discussions and assigning owners. I think that would make this time a lot more valuable. I guess I have more uncertainty around give all devs some authority over development coordination, update disclosures. I don't know what that would look like, so it's hard for me to have a specific opinion on it. I think that the action item thing is a relatively small change, but definitely valuable.
Yep, cool. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. Like as we have like already, I don't know, I've never participated into product working group or SDK working group meetings, and I don't know if this could be merged anywhere or this should be a separate thing. Um, but I do think like that having someone follow up on action items would be interesting. I mean, there's a general like problem around working groups today in Aragon is that I mean I saw that just like Yaldas just said I haven't heard much about a product working group. Um, the way basically like the working groups are currently designed and also like the fact that members of working groups have like full-time jobs in different teams and different incentives and different like occupations makes that yeah there's sometimes there's not much happening in working groups, so we have to solve that as well. But yeah, I thought that to be honest, like I'm thinking that even having someone uh, working part-time for the Aragon All Devs um, working group or even Aragon All Devs calls call on action items, following up, making sure that things are researched, that we have like yeah, things are kind of researched, and that the 2 weeks later you can have like a deep understanding of what was said, and even like, yeah, implementations of the small things that people do not have time to implement and coordinate among different network participants. So basically put a bit more dedicated resources to directly into this all dev school or working group in order to get things done. This was the idea.
Yeah, I guess I feel like it would be good to have more like technical brainstorm sessions. Is that the purpose of all devs? Like one that I wanted to bring up today had to do with the templates. I see like Brett's on here now, but yeah, I guess sometimes it's like confusing, like, oh, how much time should we spend talking about this? Should we just do it offline? Like if we're having like a 5-minute discussion and it's not enough and we're doing it offline, it's like, what's the point of even bringing up some of these topics? So I guess it's like, oh, do we want to just do topics that we need a quick question for? Yeah, it's confusing. It's confusing to me. And also like the strategy of like product working group, which Brett also he had laid down like a good plan for how that would work with like specs, feasibilities, getting approval. I would definitely, you know, like some more process in place around that. Just kind of similar to like one example is this like token API thing we're working on, and like just suggestions I was making internally to Arthur, where I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, you and Brett talked about this over chat, but I think we should still go through this process and get a spec and do like an official buy-in before we start implementation, because I want to like avoid, you know, just like I just want to increase chances of things being like just like delivered in a timely manner. So yeah, I don't really know where the best place is to discuss things like that. Like, oh, how do we optimize our development processes as a network? I think those are important things to talk about. But yeah, like I said, is it product working group? Is it all devs?
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. So without I mean so deciding if like all devs becomes is now called like development working group or something like that is kind of like the arbitrary part. So maybe we could just start with and I'm happy to help uh, do that a bit more, like for example, like setting owners for like action items, and following up with these people to make sure that things are done in between all devs, and perhaps like have a list of. So for example, like Yalda, you said there's this topic I want to clarify, and it's a bit, it's a bit hard to really have to be certain that it's going to be clarified. Is it a 5-minute conversation? Is it something we should discuss offline? Should we start having like a list of items? And also, as we see, I could go and compile everything and put them in different clusters. But I can see that we have recurring patterns in the different topics that emerged in all devs over the weeks. And maybe we want to have like a list or a way to categorize these items and make sure that there's someone detaching some resources to pay attention to them and report about them and get things started.
Yeah, I don't have any really strong feelings about the all devs at this point. I do agree it has shifted in its ideal to being more just a all network status update for the developers. Um, yeah, I mean, we now do so many off sync like outside channels from the all devs that it has become less and less useful to actually talk about things. And it does get really hard to talk about things when there's like 20 people around. If you're talking for 10 minutes and nobody else cares, you might as well just do it in a side channel.
So
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Arthur.
yeah, I totally agree with that. I guess the only question is like, if we are trying to decrease the level of update that's happening in this, if we transition it into something else, are we going to go to some sort of like asynchronous, like standardized update pattern, or are the level of asynchronous updates outside of these calls sufficient from the teams to just like drop that aspect of this without having a replacement for it? Those would be my questions in terms of like the fact that, yeah, this is basically an all network update at this point. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think originally as it was happening, it was planned, or the idea was for the all devs to be a place where we would talk about critical things that were in common to all aspects, like API updates, significant changes we were thinking about, things that would affect everybody, maybe like on the contract level too, if we're breaking contracts and things like that. As it's happened, we're mostly working on orthogonal and independent, mostly not that related aspects. And when we are, we generally should have much better form for communication, much better medium for communication that's much closer than a bi-weekly all dev update. So its purpose hasn't quite been the same. I think, for things like Ethereum where they're discussing particular protocol changes, it's important to have these type of all devs. But for us, we basically don't change. We haven't really changed, and there's not so much the baseline protocol that is dangerous to change or could not be easily changed by just updating people as they went.
So so as I understand, so is there so I'm trying to understand, is it that we want to do we want to make more room for focused discussions around different various concerns? Do we think like that status update like is a bit I mean that we can do async, or even have like um a way to do it, yeah, async, like a public chat or repo or newsletter that goes out each weekly or bi-weekly, and have all those focused on mostly like topics and main issues? Or is it what you're saying, Brett? Or are you saying that it's fine as it is?
Well, I mean, if people want to continue it, I think it's fine as it is as well. And that's generally, if you want to continue something, you might as well keep doing it. I do think that if we're just doing updates, it is a better use of time to read than it is to communicate verbally, generally. And if teams are sending weekly updates or whatever, then that's just a much easier and more efficient form of digestion for most people. When we're brainstorming certain things, though, that is a good place for a conversation, and those typically do not need to happen. Brainstorming usually breaks down when you like go past the point of like, I don't know, 8 or 10 people, when you can effectively work on an idea versus just generating ideas. So generally you want to keep those groups small as well, and that's what we've mostly done when we did have to brainstorm or like work on a specific aspect in different teams.
Okay.
Like for example, the Aragon SDK working group, we have bi-weekly stand-up calls. They work much better being 6 people than 20 people, for example. And it's because they're focused and there's specific problems at hand that we're trying to address. And it would not be useful if it was 20 people and we were all afraid to talk. So for that reason, smaller groups generally are just better at doing those particularly targeted things. And this is like, yeah, again, this was to more be on a consistent basis that we could communicate any like consistency issues with the contracts or otherwise. And I think the need for that has just been more and more clear that like those discussions don't need to happen in a place where like everyone needs to be involved.
Got it. So I'm kind of struggling like to understand like the point, which is like that. So all devs like should stay as it is, or should it just like um, uh, uh, be merged with other working groups, or just like yeah.
So I think that if I'm correctly interpreting what Brett's saying, and I sort of agree with this sentiment if I am correctly interpreting it, is basically like if we were to merge all devs with another working group, we have the potential to destroy it in the sense that the magic of the working group is in their small size. And as soon as we have the amount of people that we have in all devs right now in any working group, it essentially loses its ability to function in the fact that it's become that size. So maybe the path forward is basically we convert all devs to some sort of like text-based update, which I think most teams are probably already generating. Like we just generate an update and basically read it, which, like you said, is really inefficient. And then we have like maybe a weekly list of things that would have gone in all devs, and people can like sign up for ad hoc meetings on those specific challenges, like things that are in between the size that they're not large enough to have their own working group, but at the same time there is a need for cross group coordination. So we have like we convert all devs into a series of ad hoc meetings that people can express interest in on a biweekly cycle or something like that. Does that sort of express the concerns and propose a potential solution to the issues you're seeing, Brett?
Yeah, I think it could. I mean, don't feel strongly either way really about it, because like all devs could basically, for me at least, all devs could not exist and I would probably still have very similar information as to what I'm currently getting from, as I said, other communication channels. And this is more about updating the community and updating other people on the call. So for me, I don't think I'm in a good position to say that. And that's why I said it's mostly about if other people who are joining, if they're interested in like spending time doing this, then maybe it's interesting. This is a community oriented call meant for open participation. But you know, if everyone's just like, yeah, I could get back another hour of my life, it's like, maybe we should.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. Like, to just like have keep this level of transparency and let anyone join. I'm curious as to if like for example Aragon gets some more attention, like if people would be watching all theirs for as I see as I see it for now. Like I mean, we have a few people watching the stream every time. Like it's like, you know, one, two, three or four maximum, and we rarely have anyone from outside the main like Aragon teams joining the call themselves. So like currently like at this precise time, if like the main purpose of the call was like to provide this kind of point of contact with the outside community and world, um, perhaps like yeah, same perhaps like having a kind of async database of updates and stuff, put like somewhere on the Aragon wiki, or somewhere else could do the job. Um, yeah, it could do the job as well or even better. I don't know. But the thing is, like, yeah, as you said, like, as you get your updates, for example, in your case, from mostly other communication channels, we would still have to do the job of writing this down and making that somewhat public and accessible and clear, so we can manage to keep a level of transparency. But yeah, maybe like spending 45 minutes a week on all devs is worth it in terms of yeah, letting people see have an update and stuff for the transparency and the broader community to join.
Given the low participation in this meeting, maybe it's worth discussing this again in the next one with more people. And we can all sort of mull it over in the meantime, kind of think about what we get out of this meeting and what format would work best for us.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And perhaps I can also add that as an action item and make myself the owner and try to gather feedback from different people and come up with propositions around that, so we can make up our mind.
Um, what do you guys think if we kind of take the update part out of this call and we focus more on questions and technical documentation, and also open the call for anyone to join? I know there was some talk about the documentation working group, but maybe this can be it.
I think it makes a lot of sense. One thing we're going to start doing in Autark is creating a forum thread that's rolling status updates for Autark. And the plan was essentially to release the update every 2 weeks, coordinated with the all devs call. So that essentially makes it redundant to repeat some of that in this thread, but we also wanted to focus it more on, oh, you can be expecting these features coming up soon. And so that's the rhythm that we're trying to get into as we find like the cadence with our release cycles. So it's gonna still be like a, you know, we're doing a lot of different projects, a lot of different developers, so we're still trying to figure out like the optimal way to do it, but that's our general plan. So yeah, I'm 100% for just like removing status updates from this call, because I think it's just better for people to follow it on independently per team if it was like segregated outside of like cluttered in these notes, you know?
Would it be useful to aggregate those at the Aragon Association level, where it's like every 2 weeks there's a blog post / email newsletter, which also encourages people to get involved by joining these ad hoc meetings or proposing them or whatever, if that's the direction we're moving in?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have something that if we aren't having updates on the call directly, I mean, we still need to have them for available for anyone who does not have the information um, somewhere. So we have to replace it with something. Could be look like that. I don't think it should be like um, I don't know if what it's what you were like thinking about, but I don't think it should be like Aragon Association. I mean, doing. I actually think that um, all devs in general like would be worth being moderated by devs, and also like as it was going to look a bit more like something that some coordination on something that is done by a working group. Yeah, I don't know. it has to be at the level of the Aragon Association, especially. But makes sense.
Yeah, I think this is like one of those things where with the Ethereum Foundation, how they're trying to remove themselves from being like this central authority. So I understand your perspective of trying to reduce these sorts of responsibilities from the association and making it more of a community task.
Yeah, to be honest, like my position on that is that I mean, like for example, the work that I do for moderating all devs is not very significant. You need to do it once or twice to get used to it, but it's just going through the the agenda and the process and asking people if they have questions and stuff. And basically, like it could be interesting to have like rotation for people doing it, or to have like developers taking care of like their the this initiative. I think that I think that especially like it shouldn't be like for the it shouldn't be it's not the case, but it shouldn't be the AA moderating like all working groups and stuff. That's something we want. So I think like all those was kind of arbitrarily taken care by the AA when I came I joined. It could typically be like 3 months someone and the next 3 months someone else, and it could be useful to have people build in the skills to kind of moderate the call, which I do not pretend that I've been doing, but it's always nice and creates probably a different dynamic in terms of engagement and stuff. Once everyone has moderated the call, they probably feel more like um, uh, easy like participating and stuff.
I think we can make like a distinction here between the types of updates, because it feels like these updates that we've been doing, they kind of have the intention of keeping us accountable. And I think this is something we can do on a forum post, like you guys said, and it's for our best interest. And there's also the kind of updates that are supposed to be informative and saying, okay, now you can use the Aragon design system or these kind of apps because they are ready. So for example, I don't think it's very useful for you guys if we tell you what we are working on the CLI and how we are building it. But I think it will be useful if, once we have a release, we can show you a little video on how it works so you can get up to speed, much faster.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'd love just like a memo every 2 weeks with all the updates from everyone and embedded videos and all that. I feel like that would be cool, and maybe what we can strive towards that was brought up by Chad is if we can roll up these updates, and maybe it's just like a HackMD and we all just collectively put our updates there, and the goal is to have it done by a certain date, and then it just gets like distributed as a newsletter or forum post. Maybe it's not a requirement for people to do it, but as other people do it, I think there might be that implied pressure that you should do it too.
You're talking about the accountability updates, right?
Oh no, just like a general like status updates, or like you're saying, if there's nothing to share, you can just say, working on this, and then once there's something released, here's a demo, here's how you can use it, and then from like me as someone that's like trying to understand like everything that's going on in the network, I just know like every 2 weeks I should just like review this memo and make sure it's like, just like a few people can just make sure that they read it. I want to know API stuff that's in the pipeline, or thoughts around advancements to the SDK and how it might like help some problems we're running into. So yeah, I'd rather not have to come to these calls to learn about that. Or I want to come to these calls, but I think, yeah, like we're saying, status updates are probably better if they're consumed in a format where you can like read and not like be half paying attention sometimes.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Anyone wants to comment? All right. Then yeah. Well, what I try to do is go around and also like ask people who were not on the call and are usually there what they think about that and about the different options that we have been talking about, like taking like the doing the updates in more async and written way, and refocusing the all devs on things that actually make us interested and sound valuable and sound exciting. So uh, even though like the group is large, we still have like a certain amount of interest and engagement and FOMO about the call. Um, that I think that's what we want to have with a bi-weekly call like that. So we'll keep thinking about it. And I don't know. Anyone wants to add a topic before we end this call? I think, yeah, okay. Yala, did you want to mention like the to talk in template thing, or now that Brady's here, or
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I was gonna post the autark status update on the forum, so
got it.
maybe that's the better place to do it. But like I said, I don't know if it makes sense in between like a team status update either. But basically, the question had to do with the long-term strategy for how templates are being developed. Like we're gonna add a template for the reputation template that connects to the new token manager, the experimental token manager we developed. But then there are all these questions of you know, we want to we want people to have more flexibility whenever they're creating an organization, to basically be able to add 2 tokens if they need. So you can support the governance structure of having like a 1-person, 1-vote membership token in addition to something that might be considered a reputation template, which can or can't be transferable or non-transferable. And then we've also been getting requests to add the agent app to Open Enterprise. So then all these this is like a big can of worms for the super customizable, like all these different routes of like what's possible. And these agent questions, I mean, the agent requests were just coming up, so we were gonna like just get this template that we worked on audited, but now we're just like circling back, like we don't want to maintain like 3 different Open Enterprise templates. How's that even going to work with the front end of how the client is now? So I'm just trying to pause any additional work there for our template and just kind of do like a reality check of, well, what do we want? Are you guys thinking of new things for the template? Is the UI going to stay pretty much the same for the next 6 months? Because then that will allow us to kind of figure out this next iteration. But even like right now, with the client right now, you have the 3 different options, like company, reputation, template, and like ideally the Open Enterprise might just be considered an optional optional application suite that you're adding to it. And even in those 3 options that we have, we might even want the ability to initialize with 2 tokens as an optional thing too. So like from like a UX perspective, the way I see it is that seems like the longer term strategy of how we might want to do this onboarding flow. But from a product roadmap perspective, I'm not sure how long it will take to get there, just from a redefining how the UX works thing. So like, yeah, I guess the question is, should we just keep maintaining the Open Enterprise template and being like experimental with the conditional options that a user may have? Or should we think about the longer term strategy of if the current UX makes sense with the different governance and application options that a user may want during their initialization flow?
The short answer to that is yes. Most likely in the next 6 months, it is unlikely for us to change how the templates are done. There's a lot of, I mean, templates are just awful to write and to maintain. They do not allow us to do a lot of things because of how Ethereum generally works and the limitations that we have with that. But doing it in a more dynamic manner is just difficult to have verifiable organizations that were minted from like one particular one particular template and are safe.
Mm-hmm.
Things can go wrong. That's why we made templates in the first place. But yeah, they're definitely hitting their, like they're definitely much way over their half-life in terms of usefulness. But the hard questions are not answered by any means.
Yeah. So do you think it makes sense to just like do what we can to have a single open enterprise template? And like, for example, like what I'm trying to specify right now for the template work we did is basically we have to add agent to it and then add the option for it to be 1 token or 2 token. So basically our contract ends up having this flexibility, and in our flow and how the client would look, you still see open enterprise there once. The change may be, though, is if we have flexibility for that pop-up, for us to have like maybe like a different button there or something, so you can do like 1 token or 2 tokens, because I think you can't select that while you're in the flow, because I think the restriction right now is we can't conditionally add a second token page after the user already clicks on use this template. Like before then, we have to know how many token managers they have, right? So I think I don't know if that's like one restriction that could be changed, because if we allow adding another token screen conditionally based on what the user says after they click use this template, like our first screen, they check what's your governance model or whatever. And then based on that, we render 2 token managers for them to set up or 1. So that's our basic requirement right now. So we've been trying to design it around, okay, like if we can't add another token screen here, we have to I haven't checked yet if it's possible for us to do that at the use this template level. I assumed it might be, since we have like the agent thing there, but I don't know. But yeah, maybe this is just going into a deep dive.
Everything I said about templates is only in the smart contract side. The smart contract side is enormously difficult if we make it more dynamic. The front end side, we can do anything too. Like, very simple. There are perhaps a few restrictions right now, but it's not difficult, I'd say, to change, to have like different paths, or even for us to select different templates that maybe you have a different template that does slightly something different, but you want to roll it up into the same front end and expose an option. I mean, shouldn't be something super difficult to do. Changing the front end should not.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so then it is possible for us to experiment more with how the front end could change to support these contracts that might have like more conditional elements in them.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Okay, so we'll think more about that and maybe just like come up with a potential design proposal and make sure that the UX is cohesive with how everything else works. Cool.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We are done for today, I think, unless someone has a very urgent topic. But yeah, we'll see each other in 2 weeks. Let's also think about how all devs might work in the future. In the meantime, I may get in touch with some of you, and yeah, Have a very good week, everyone. And Brett, I think it's I want an offsite, so have a great offsite. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Louis.